The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around a subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter.
Welcome back to The Things We All Carry, and welcome back to a surprise episode. I'm going to drop this on a day I don't normally drop an episode. I sat down today to kind of cull through the episodes I have and what I have ready to go, and I was trying to decide which one to release next week, and I remembered this one, and I took a look at it again, and it's kind of an episode to itself. It's one I wanted to release kind of just like this on a whim and say, hey, here it is. This is what we talk about. Take a listen and see what you think. And this episode is with Steven out of Houston again. Steven Sims is a firefighter from the Houston area. He has been in the fire service since about 2007. He's a ladder truck driver in 55's due in Houston. He's been through a lot in his career as a firefighter, but during that time as a firefighter, he's been through a lot as a parent. And we talk about his experience as a father of kids with autism. He has three kids, and they range from 26 to 5. The youngest, the 5-year-old, has been diagnosed with autism. He is what typically you would hear people refer to as nonverbal, but Stephen and his wife prefer to say non-speaking because he does communicate. He just has his own style of communicating. And Stephen has learned how to navigate the waters of special ed. And it's a valuable thing to know. And it's a valuable thing to hear about. And it's valuable for us to hear that, you know, if your child has some special needs at school, many others have special needs out there. And many of us have experience working with kids with special needs. And so I think this is a valuable episode just from that standpoint alone. Hey, what's out there? What can you do? What resources are available? And what can you do as a parent? Stephen lays it out quite a bit for us, and he's an interesting person to talk to. He's a fascinating human and individual. He spends the first part of the show talking about his kids and autism and how he's learned to work with it and how he's learned to work with the school system and what services are available. And then the second part of the show, we talk about ADHD and kind of an adult diagnosis of ADHD and how he went about dealing with that and learning how to make changes in his life to make himself more successful and more focused and more available, I guess would be a good way to put it. This was a conversation we had just after Christmas, after the New Year. And you can hear that I'm still sick. I got hit with a couple of colds right around Christmas, and you can hear it in my voice. I'm still sick. And so this is part 2 of my conversation with Steven Sims from Houston, Texas. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get something from it. And just let me know. Let's talk about it. Let's open a dialogue and remember, what happens at home affects what we do at work, and what happens at work affects what we do at home. So all of this is intertwined and interconnected, and all of this is just important information to get out there and talk about. So you go out there, enjoy your day, give it a listen, and tell me what you think. This is episode 105 with Steven Sims. A quick reminder to please help us build a community which not only recognizes, but supports each other through the struggles and recovery. Reach out through Instagram at The Things We All Carry or email my story at thethingsweallcarry.com to offer support and share your story. Please remember to leave a review on iTunes and give a shout out to any first responder you know, love, or care about. Y'all enjoy the show. So, you feel good? Ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, welcome back to The Things We All Carry. Today, well, this morning, actually, no, it's afternoon for me. So this afternoon, I've got Steven coming back on the show. He was with me a couple of weeks ago before the holidays, and we kind of talked about his story and his fire service experience. And today we're going to spend some time talking about, ADHD, his experience with ADHD in the fire service, and maybe get into kind of the prevalence of ADHD in the fire service. Neither one of us are scientists. Neither one of us have done research.
scientifically at least about neurodivergence in the fire service. But coming from the standpoint of experiencing life ourselves with it, it's something to talk about. And then we're also going to kind of discuss his experience as a dad with a child with autism and how that affects him, how it affects his day-to-day life, not only in the firehouse, but also at home. And the two are intertwined, so they affect each other. Good morning, Stephen. How are you? Or good afternoon, excuse me.
Good. Good morning, afternoon.
And I know we talked a little bit about holidays.
Afternoon here too.
I know we talked a little bit about the holidays, but we'll share it with the guys or the audience. How was your holiday?
Oh, it's good. We don't do a lot of family things anymore. We kind of just focus on us. It seems being a neurospicy household, it seems to go off better if we just kind of do our own thing, and we're not kind of stuck in somebody else's house or under somebody else's timeline. We just can do what we want to do, and it turns out better for our family that way. So we just hung out at the house, did Christmas and New Year's at the house. Our 5-year-old is it's all about the holidays right now, so we're just encouraging that for a developmental standpoint for his autism. But beyond that, we just had a great family holiday.
So those are the two things we want to talk about. And I don't know how you want to do them, how you want to start. You want to start with you, or do you want to start with being the parent of a child with autism?
Well, let's start with being a parent, because I was a parent with, autistic and ADD children before I found out I was ADHD.
Okay.
Pretty much that's what drove me into getting a diagnosis for ADHD. But my background in my family, I've been with my wife over a quarter of a century now. 26, 27 years. We have 2 older children. Both have autism and ADD and dyslexia, which all of those fall under the umbrella of neurodivergence.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our oldest one is 26. Our middle boy is 20, and then we have a younger son, which is he's 5 years old, and he's also autistic. He's considered, some people use the word nonverbal. We prefer non-speaking because he's always communicated.
Mm-hmm.
He just hasn't communicated, speaking wise, with words and all of that.
So what ways are you communicating with them then? And let me, before we get too much further into it, I want to preface this with my experience with it. And I worked on the other end. My kids were, well, I guess you would say neurotypical, but I don't know if anybody's neurotypical, to be honest with you. But my experience is from the professional side, because my previous career before I joined the fire service was with families and children with autism. And I practiced a little bit of ABA. And so I've got a pretty good working knowledge of what you're talking about. And so I don't want to jump too far ahead of it for the audience, but how are you communicating with him then?
Well, in the beginning, he was using, our 5-year-old was developmentally and all that on track, and being a parent of older kids, coming in with this new younger one, we had more of a plan.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just like kind of trial by fire. We actually knew our mistakes and were aware of our mistakes and knew what we could do better, and plus, from your older kids, you get Yelp reviews, which is not always
Yelp review
fun to listen to, but it helps, it really helps.
Of course it does.
And if you're willing to listen, and not be dismissive of those, comments on how bad your parenting was at sometimes. But we took all of that and we had ideas on the way we wanted to go uh, with our youngest, and he was developing fine. And I was like, I'm going to try this, sign language, baby sign language. And typical of my family, is I started teaching him, and he's like, nah, I don't want to do that. I think he learned like all done. He waved his hands like all done, and he learned more. But beyond that, it wasn't that. And then my wife was more aware of he wasn't developing right than I was. And when she first mentioned it, I was kind of resistant to it because I don't know. I can't even why. I was resistant, but she pretty much slapped me upside the head, said, "Hey, something's wrong. You got to listen to me." And while this was going on, another firefighter had brought his kid that was closely around the same age at the time, was around 2 years old. And I heard that 2-year-old talk, and I was like, my wife's gonna be mad at me because I didn't listen to her. But I saw this other kid talking. I was like, oh man, she's right. So he was this for a while. He was this what I call radio silent. He was quiet. He would point at stuff more. Make noise and sound. We called it tucka. He would just talk like tucka tucka tucka. But he would be having conversations, but just not speaking. And then one word, he would have one word here, one word there, but not much. And so around 2, we took him in, and he got diagnosed with autism and in the speech delay. And I think around 2, his speech was around a 9-month-old. But on the flip side of that, his problem solving skills were of a 5 to 6-year-old. So if you could only imagine having a toddler that can't speak, at a 2-year-old level, but can, I want that. And he's going to figure out how to get that at a 5 to 6-year-old level. So, and then we started early education through the state because he was under 3. And it was, I think we tried the picture exchange thing. I think it's called PEC.
Yeah, it's PEC.
And again, like sign language, he's like, I'm not doing that, So it was a lot of this, like with him was just like one word and pointing and like trying to figure out what he was saying to you. And the one thing I did learn from his early educational teacher that I took from there was just talking to him like he's normal, like, I mean, he is normal, but, just having regular conversation with him and not baby talking, not using, a different kind of language you wouldn't use in the household. And that's what I did. And it's pretty much called perceived competence. So like he's understanding, he's just not able to verbally tell you what he wants or needs or anything like that. So from that day on, I just talked to him like he was normal, like in a normal conversation mode. It was no special way of talking to him. And that's pretty much how we communicated. It was just a lot of detective work until recently. He also, we also used an AAC device with him. It's just an iPad with an app on it, but kind of having issues back and forth to school with that right now. I think that's another challenge with kids with autism or any special educational needs. Sometimes with the schools, it's kind of difficult to get things going in the right direction for the child. We can talk about that. We have time later, but he uses that right now. as well, but his verbal communication is way more vast than it was 6 months ago. So he's using full sentences now. He's actually he could actually tell you his wants and needs a lot. He still does go radio silent, where he just doesn't talk, doesn't want to talk. So, but when he is being verbal and he is wanting to communicate and he's wanting to talk about things, we're very big on promoting those things. Like, he's really been talking about the new year. So we did things with him on New Year's Eve. He's been talking about the lunar New Year as well. So I'm learning about that. I have someone
I just learned that's March
that I work with that can direct me on the lunar New Year stuff. So without you being here and seeing how we communicate, it's kind of hard to articulate really how we communicate with him. But
I think that's a common thing. I think even when sometimes when you're in the room and you're watching a parent communicate with as you say, a non-speaking, typically called nonverbal, you have to follow along for a while. You have to go, okay, now I see what they're doing. When I was working with kids and families, I would go into a house and I would just stand in a corner. Basically, I would try to make myself part of the wallpaper and just observe. And with absent of that, it's hard to explain anything.
Yeah. And with the 5-year-old, it's so much. There's so much more information out there now, and but unfortunately, still, like you get your child gets a diagnosis. I can say this from my point of view. I don't know anywhere else or anybody else, but I know there is not a clear roadmap. Like your child is diagnosed with autism, here are the next steps you need to do.
Right.
I think when this recent diagnosis, they sent a social worker in and she started talking about Medicaid waivers. And I'm sitting there like, I'm not on Medicaid. I have private insurance. And like, she was not able to articulate very well what those were.
Right.
And I didn't get a very good explanation until we started early education, and his early educational teacher explained what those Medicaid waivers were. And I'm like, oh, I wish they had told me this, could explain this 8 months ago.
Right.
I could have been on all those lists 8 months ago. So it's those things that, and with our older ones, guidance whatsoever, like transitioning, from high school to adult life, which, they're going to be behind the curve on that maturity anyway. But, again, that there's no clear information. You have to go hunt. You have to pretty much become an expert and then go hunt for this information to understand what the steps are. And unfortunately, with my oldest son, we're so behind because the information wasn't there, or we didn't know where to look for the information, or we didn't know the wording to find the information. So unfortunately, he's the child we made the most mistakes on.
Right.
He got his diagnosis later after high school. For him, his autism more deals with like the social interactions, thinking more on a logical linear thinking, black and white.
Yeah.
Very smart, very engineered, mathematical minded person. But I have to tell myself sometimes when he's talking that he's not being an asshole. He's just talking, because he can come off that way sometimes. And I love him to death. And I guess it's that straightforward, logical way of speaking. You're like, there's just, and that's his. And then, our middle son, he's just, it's more the social and the social anxiety kind of things. And that's where his struggle is. So,
So how does
but it seems like every kid we gotten better at being that, a parent to a newer diverse child.
so how
Unfortunately for the other two, we were better, we're better with the youngest than,
well,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, like, you're gone for 24 hours at a clip, at least, right?
Yeah.
So how did you establish the ability to maintain consistency with those hours that you're gone? So it all falls to your wife at that point, correct?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you guys have to be in sync on a certain level to continue that on, correct? It had to have taken a ton of practice just, with the 5-year-old alone.
Man, my wife she's a stay at home, her job is to stay at home. She takes, we just was a point at some point in our marriage that we're like, I told her, I'll work as much as possible, stay at home, make sure kids are taken care of and all that. So it was, so she runs the house. She's the, CEO of the house, or however you want to say
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And that's not taken lightly at all. I am trying to find a way when I retire, she has a retirement as well. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
because she might go back in the workforce down the road. Who knows? We'll see where life takes us. But if she doesn't, she stays at home. I mean, she was my partner through all this. She deserves some kind of like retirement, just as people talk about my retirement from the fire department. So that's one thing I want to do for her. But man, it's just like I guess we figured out what our strengths were and what our weaknesses were.
Mm-hmm.
For her, she's a very organized person. We're trying to figure out which one of us, or if both of us, have autism. I know we all have ADHD, but she's very organized in that way, taking care of the house, and all that. And then, I come in and help. Figured out a long time ago that I was being, that you can be not mindful of people struggling, to do their job or whatever. And I just, through our relationship, just kind of figured out, okay, these are the places that are my strengths and I can step in and help. And so I do that. But also, unfortunately to that, I am the chaos to her organization sometimes.
Yeah.
Like she runs a tight ship when I'm not here, and the ship is very loose when I'm here. Again, it's just trying to figure out that how you can help each other and not get in each other's way.
So what
That's
what have you found? I mean, you're a few months ago, I spoke to a therapist out in California. Her name is Destiny Morris, and we talked about this reentry into the house, and we talked about it just based on this the husband and wife dynamic. So you're coming home, and you're kind of amped up from work, and your wife is probably a little amped up from having to take care of the house for the entire time you've been gone. And there's a trick to
Right.
reintegrating, and there's a trick from both sides to reintegrate, and then move on and have kind of perform with a seamless day, right? So
Yeah.
what have you found? What tricks work for you then, to kind of fit yourself back into the household and the flow of things?
Well, I've started sleeping in at the station. I don't get up and rush home. I'll sleep in for a little bit, and then get my coffee, and I'll wake up and I get up, get my coffee, and I'll start a podcast, start a book. If I don't have any of that, I'll like listen to music on the way home, and I just enjoy my coffee on the way home. And then I'll get home and I'll just come in and kind of mill around the house. If it's like during the school week or whatever, she's got the little one up and off to school, and I'm coming in and she's kind of already started her day. She's, either worked out or she's starting to do whatever household chores she needs to do that day. And I just kind of come in and I usually listen, got my AirPods in, listen to something, and I'll drink my coffee and I'll unload my truck and all that kind of stuff. And then I'll slowly go upstairs and just kind of like, I'm usually just wearing my fire department t-shirt and shorts and Crocs, but I'll go take my fire department shit off, throw it in the dirty clothes, put my normal clothes on, and then we'll either have coffee together, we'll have breakfast together, hang out for a little bit. We got errands to do, we'll go do that. Not really a system, but it's just kind of how we found the flow.
Mhm.
And then if it's like, if I had a bad day, she can read it when I come through the door. And then she's more like, okay, I am not going to talk to him.
She's hands off at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. She's hands off pretty
Yeah.
much, and, and I think I said this in a previous podcast that sometimes I'm very bad at articulating that I'm having a bad day or I had
Right.
a bad night or I woke up in a mood or whatever. So, which I'm trying to get better at. But she can read me. She knows me well enough. And then she'll put out there, hey, you're being a little grumpy. Hey, you're doing this or whatever. And then it's up to me at that point to try to reset or just say, I don't think I'm going to be out of this mood for a minute, or whatever. And she has her ways of like, again, just sitting down, watching a movie, watching a TV show, and just trying to change that mood a little bit without pressuring me as much.
Right.
Of course, it doesn't always work because we can both be in a mood, and those are the days that can be a struggle for us because we're really trying not to hurt each other's feelings, but at the same time, trying to manage our own emotions and the household, and all that as well. So it's, it's not always great. But
No, of course it's not.
again, any relationship, over a quarter century, sometimes is not great, but that's pretty much it. Before, when I was on a busy apparatus, man, I would just come home and go to sleep and wake up,
Mhm.
around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was just kind of like I was in a haze most of the day then, but it's the same thing. She was just kind of navigating the house around me and trying to let me get sleep. And then just trying to like, all right, let's just chill out. Let's do this, or we need to go do this or whatever. And, again, we have a big calendar in the kitchen. It's a dry erase board. We live and die by that thing.
Yeah.
And so, it's always just seeing what's on the calendar and, just do what we need to do that day. And then, trying to get our little projects done as well.
Well, you mentioned it that you didn't know of services. You didn't get diagnosis for the older kids until they were basically the oldest was out of high school, and then I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't remember when you said you got it for the middle child, but can you talk a little bit about that? What was your experience with schools? And I know that every school district is different because it depends on it has a lot of variables. I understand that, and I hope the listeners
Right.
understand it as well.
Yeah.
But what did you find beneficial? What did you find difficult? How did you navigate that whole, hey, my child needs some services?
Yeah. Well, it, the school thing is a double-edged sword to say, because you have on one side, you have great things, you have great teachers and all that. And then you have the other side, the sharp, what I'm gonna call the sharp side, which is they don't always tell you the information you need to know,
Right.
and it's I don't know why. I don't really understand the why behind that, but like my oldest son just struggled throughout school, with teachers and administrators and all this. Um, and then when we got to high school, one of his engineering teachers, just like took him under his wing and was a very big advocate for him. So that was one good thing at school. He finally had someone at school that understood him and took care of him and advocated for him. And that teacher was the one that suggested autism. Have you ever looked into autism? Because he just had for special education purposes, he had ADHD, dyslexia, and emotional disturbance.
Okay.
Which I know they're trying to get away from that wording now.
The emotional disturbance.
I don't know what they're trying. Yeah,
Okay.
Emotional disturbance. They're trying to get away from that. But again, it's an umbrella thing, and I see why they use it. The middle son, he had when he was elementary school, how to get up and move around and all that kind of stuff. And one of his teachers, like, he can get up, move around all he wants, as long as he stays around his desk.
Right.
Like very understanding. And then he both of those boys are dyslexic, and my middle son had dyslexic support all the way through. My oldest, at some point, the school district that he started school in, but we moved away from, but this was one of the reasons, said he basically that his dyslexia was cured.
Just cured. I'm not sure how you cure it.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, and that school district was more how they treated kids with his special education classifications was more of this felt like prison to me.
Okay.
And to my wife. And that's why we left that school district and moved to another city that had a highly rated school district, same one we're in now. But with those two, we really didn't understand the whole process. Especially the IEP, the individual educational plan that you get every year when you're in special education. We didn't understand goals, and we didn't really understand the usage of goals, and how you could use goals for learning life skills, like. The two older boys, we could have them and, one of the life skills was like driver's ed through the school with that special education support. We didn't know we could ask for those things. They were never suggested to us.
Right.
Either, so like just this and realizing, how much the schools have, how long they're at school they're at school longer than you have them at home.
Yes.
So why are we not using the school time to teach these life skills that they really don't want to learn from us anyway? Because we're parents and we're dumb and stupid and we don't know what we're talking about. It's normal kid stuff. So unfortunately, with the older two, we didn't get those essential services that we needed. With the youngest, I don't think they like dealing with me well because I'm way more educated in it. I come in with an advocate mindset, so it's like I'm asking the tough questions. Like last year during his IEP, his annual meeting to go over his IEP for this year, like I got to the meeting, sat down right next to the principal, pulled out my computer, pulled out the, notes I had and tabs and highlighted and then, and all this stuff. And they're like, what you got going on there? I'm like, you ready to have this meeting? Because I am.
You're an administrator's nightmare.
Yeah. And it's, again, it's just, the knowledge that parents don't have going in, because a lot of the goals they put into those IEPs, I feel like are cut and paste from a bank.
Right.
And also they're putting they're putting this whole educational plan on the teacher,
Right.
one single teacher, or maybe it's, the special education liaison may help too. I'm not sure how all that works within the school, but, because again, I deal mostly with the teacher. Um, but, though, and it's, and again, I feel like everything we fight for is a systematic thing and not, I don't want to blame the individual, like the teacher or any of the special educational staff.
Right.
If I'm going to start blaming someone, I'm going to start blaming the principal because they're an administrator of the school,
Yeah.
kind of, run the system. And far more than that, I'm going to blame the special education director of the school district.
Yeah.
Because those would be the system to me. And, but I mean, we just had awesome experiences with teachers. Like my middle one had a meeting one time about, man, I can't get this math. I can't get him to do his math. It feels like a fight every day after school. And she just looked at me and was like, teacher was like, it's not your job to teach him math. It's my job to teach him math. And so from there on, for him, the problem with homework almost went away. That teacher kind of set the standard after that of us talking about doing homework and assistance with homework and standing up saying, hey, we're not here to teach this homework. So y'all, we're gonna have to figure out a way for him to understand this and be able to get his assignments completed.
Right.
So it was that I guess that would be the start of advocacy for us, and I was always an advocate for my older boy with his emotional disturbance because just the way some people treated him, and not trying to stand where he was coming from, and he's kind of labeled as a bad kid sometimes, and he was not a bad kid. He was never malicious, never had a malicious. He just he's a lot like me when it comes to rules, and it's like, you better tell me why I'm doing this, because if you're just telling me to do it, then good luck on you to get me to do it.
Strange how that happens, huh? They end up like us.
Yeah. And I sometimes want to punch myself in the face when I hear them talk because they use my words against me.
Yeah, I experienced that once or twice. Yeah,
but so with the older two, it was just not knowing anything, and now it's knowing everything and then getting those services put into place for whatever reason. Like an example was getting an AAC device for my son. The school couldn't supply one, but it was like, hey, I can get through the state with this program that take money out of telecommunication taxes, so cell phone, internet,
right,
all that kind of stuff. And people with communication problems can get a device or whatever they need through the state. You just got to fill this, paperwork out. And I needed a speech pathologist to fill out one part. And the school did the evaluation. So I went to them and like, no, you need to go to your private. So I went to private, and the private's like, we can do this, but we'll have to do another evaluation. Let's not waste time and go back through the school. I'm like, I agree with you. So I go back through the school, and the speech pathologist like refused to do it. And then, I sent a pretty nasty email to everyone, including the special education director. And I need in writing, basically saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it. Why can't you sign this piece of paper to get a device that he needs?
Right.
So I need in writing why y'all are not going to do this.
Right. Put the pressure on them.
Yeah. And it was at the end of the school year, and it really didn't get settled. And so as soon as the school year started, I kind of gave it a couple weeks, and I just started firing off emails, things that are not taken care of from last year. One of them was the AAC device. Another was an evacuation plan.
Yeah.
Since our,
Yep.
you know, our youngest, non-speaking, nonverbal, what if he gets evacuated? Who's going to go with him? Who's going to be his communication partner? What happened if his communication partner gets injured or killed? What are you going to, what are you going to tell what are you going to tell first responders?
Right.
Do we need to bring the first responders in for training? Do they know what is needed for all special education students? Because not only am I advocating for him, I'm advocating for all the special education students at the campus.
And the answer to that
and in the school district.
The answer to that is no.
Nothing.
First responders don't know how to work with special needs.
Right.
Not for the most part.
And yeah, exactly. I've collected many people in the fire service using outdated language. I know it's in the common language now, but people use Asperger's, and I'm like, there's no Asperger's, it's just autism.
Yeah.
Functioning levels, that's not a really thing anymore. All this kind of things. And I'm like, and I tell them, I was like, language is important.
Yeah.
Especially dealing with, people with autism and other neurodiversities. The language is important because language almost starts to paint a myth of things sometimes, or misunderstanding of things. And so I'm like, that's why I'm correcting you. And I will continue to correct you because this is, just one of those hills I'll die on.
Right.
But it's just things like that. Well, with the evaluation plan, which we're getting there better. They still haven't answered my questions yet, but and I'm like I tell them on the evacuation plan, this is the worst case scenario. You can't get a hold of me. You can't get a hold of my life. It's just a crazy scenario. You're throwing kids in buses. You're throwing kids in ambulances, whatever. How is this going to go? How are we going to,
Right.
How is he going to communicate? How are we going to know how to do this? So, because God forbid you lose my child. Like, I'm going to hold you personally responsible for losing my child, and I have brought this up to you multiple times. So, and again, that's like the failure within the systems. I don't know why there's not an evacuation plan. I don't, and again, I don't know why first responders don't have an idea about the schools and what the school needs during evacuation. Because I don't, where I work, I don't. I'm kind of on my own trying to fix that. I've reached out to schools to try to figure out a way to have somewhat of information without having personal information out there, just the basics of what we need, where the special education classes are, if there's any medical needs we need to know about if we make response. And I'm trying to make a binder of that. So if we do make that school, we do understand these are the things we need to do. And I'm kind of doing that at my level, my territory, because I just don't think we can do that at a department level right now.
No, I don't think you can. I think that's a first due level.
Yeah. So
and
there's go ahead.
No, you go ahead, man. Go.
Sorry. No, I just said those are just kind of like the couple examples of the challenges it is with the system to get the services you need.
I think my question was going to be just if you had a top three. Yeah, let's go with three. You're speaking to a coworker, or you're speaking to an audience of parents who are trying to figure out what's going on with their children and trying to figure out the school system. If you had this top three things you need to come prepared with, what are those top three things for this?
I'm going to pull up a note real quick. Well, first of all is you need to become an expert in whatever is with your child. what's going on with your child
Mm-hmm.
is you have to know just as much. You have to know just as much as the experts do. If you don't understand what they're talking about, it's just them and tell them to explain it to you in a very elementary way. Like, I
Okay.
don't understand what you're saying, and and continue to have them explain it to you till you understand it.
Right.
And because you can't go in somewhere and ask for things for your child and not know what to ask for,
No, not at all. You
or
can't
not
do
to know what your rights are. If you're going to have a kid in special education, I suggest you go either buy the printed version of the special education law under the IDEA Act, buy that and learn it, like study it and learn it. So
Yeah.
when you go in there, all the procedural processes, what your rights are, because you see a lot with schools that they'll take a segment of the law that says we can only give your kid this because the law says this. But you read further down into that law, into number of points, ability to points, or whatever, you'll find what you're asking for is completely within your right.
Yeah.
And the third thing I would say is when you're asking for accommodations and all that for your child, you're not begging and pleading with people. You're not asking. You are requesting these accommodations because those are your child's civil rights.
Yeah.
And if they say no, they are saying no to your civil rights. And then the federal government does not like that. And they will come down hard on the schools. And that's the mindset you really had to have. I'm not coming in and asking for a favor.
Right.
I'm requesting that my child's civil rights under the law are seen to.
Yeah. You're holding the school system accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like you said, it's not, hey, can we think about doing this? No, it's, hey, this is what my child deserves. This is what they're owed under the law. Give it to us.
Yeah.
And don't,
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a runaround. And I want to revisit one of the things you said, ask them to explain it until you understand it. I think even more importantly, ask them to explain it until they understand it.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference there. They can spout off what they think is right, but then as you talk more about it and you delve more into it, it's just like you said, you're pointing out what the rights are. And you're pointing out, okay, you read a segment of the law. Now let's read the entirety of the law and let's find out, no, this is what my child is entitled to, not offered, entitled to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's switch.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good.
No,
I was just saying, and just always push back. Don't take no for an answer, and always push back. And then there's there's a whole procedure you can go through, but every time, say I need this in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime they say no or they can or whatever, just I need this in writing.
Yep.
And the only thing you're doing is building up a case
Paper trail
that they cannot educate your child.
Yep.
So then you can go, well, you cannot provide, an education for my child. So now we're got to go find a place that can, with you covering the cost.
Yep. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount and I appreciate all of you. I have one request though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show. Let's switch gears a little bit here because we want to fit in a little bit of talk about ADHD as well.
Right.
And you've talked about it with me. You're pretty open about it with me, and I think you're pretty open about it with anybody. You
Yeah.
you yourself are diagnosed with ADHD. I'm not diagnosed,
Yep.
but I noticed the hallmarks, and I'm actually on the path to finding that out a little bit. So, when were you diagnosed with ADHD?
I was diagnosed with ADHD in my mid-30s.
Okay.
Um, my first chauffeur exam, probably I was 31, so 33, 34.
Okay.
And I just, I don't know how other people did. With us, it was just books and guidelines, right?
Yeah.
I think we had 4 books, and all the guidelines probably ended up being another 2 or 3 books,
Yeah.
paper wise. And I just didn't study. Like, I knew I needed to study. I knew I wanted to promote, but, you know, again, the knowledge of knowing and doing something and actually performing it are 2 different things, and especially with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And within that time, my kids are going to see the doctor for ADHD. They're doing all the school stuff. And I'm like, I think I got it. I really think I have it. And so after I didn't study for my first over exam, the next one was coming up, and I just want to do everything right. It's like, if I'm going to get on meds and all that, I want to do it right. And so went and got psychological testing, and I was diagnosed with ADHD. And I read my psychological testing, and it was hilarious because just all the hallmarks of ADHD,
Right.
like late for every appointment, conversations were all over the place.
Yeah.
And it just, all this, hard when I was doing all the little tests, me just trying to concentrate to do all the tests. Cause doctor was just observing me the whole time, and I just laughed. It was funny. I was given that, and then I could go see, that was with a psychologist. Then I could go see a psychiatrist to get medication.
Right.
But unfortunately, for me, I was just given medication, which, really helped me, but I was never given any tools to manage my ADHD. I was never given any tools to manage my ADHD with medication, and understanding that you're going to have all this newfound focus that you never had before, and you can use that all for bad.
Yeah.
Going down,
The old use it for good, not for evil thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so I stumbled through that. I stumbled through my 40s. At one point, after my my next chauffeur exam I took, got promoted. I forgot how many people were on the list. Over 300. I was 51 on the list. So I did fairly well. I studied. It gave me gave me the focus, and I studied.
Right.
And again, I got 51. Oh, I was 51 on the list. So, pretty proud of that. But, after that, I was like, man, I don't need this medication. And then I realized, oh shit, I need this medication because, my life was just going back to in the toilet again on certain things. It was always in the toilet on other things, but, I got back on medication, and I've been using it consistently since then. Some people don't do well on medication. Like my 2 older kids, they never did well on the stimulants. My oldest boy did do well on the non-stimulants because of his liver function, but the stimulants were great for me. But then fast forward a few years ago, when what I'm calling is starting my journey, and I think this is where I started my journey. My wife started talking about executive functioning,
Yeah.
Like, hey, you need to look into executive functioning. And so, again, she's a smart lady. She plants a little seed in my head
And just lets it
and
sit
kind
there,
of
right?
mills around. And
Yeah.
then, one day I just, I hit the YouTube, and I found Dr. Russell Barkley, and he's got multiple uh, videos out there on ADHD, but the ones I saw were segments of one big speech. I don't know where he did it at, but I mean, he went through what causes ADHD, in the brain, like all the scientific stuff. And then it got to the executive functioning. And it's like that stuff hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Like impulse control, self-motivation, working memory, all those things that I struggle with a lot. And that's where I really started learning about ADHD and tools I needed to use to help me manage it. Even though I do have, I'm on medication for it, again, I still have to, it helps me, but it doesn't get rid of what they call executive dysfunction. So my phone is like my personal assistant. Again, I have a calendar, my calendar, and I really use that for like, if that involves other people, like I have appointments, I have meetings, the kids have appointments, wife has appointments, things of that nature, like, um, involves other people and other people's time, that goes on my calendar. And then, since I'm in the Apple ecosystem, I use, Apple reminders as well.
Right.
And that's more like things that involve me, like, errands.
Mm-hmm.
I have things I need to do. I use it. I have a to-do list. If I have projects going on, I have I use that to-do list on those projects. Just simple things like Siri, like, hey Siri, remind me, call my meds in tomorrow. Hey Siri, you know, she's
I was
listening.
gonna say she's probably listening right now.
Yeah. Or put milk on the shopping list, right? Because with my ADHD, that is just, it works well because I just can grab
Yeah.
my phone. Hey, put this here. Now it's on the shopping list.
Yep.
And so those are like tools I've used to really help me learn, and I've learned that over the last few years to do that.
Now with
And,
the executive functioning and vice versa, the executive dysfunction.
yeah,
So you're using these tools, like the calendar, the Siri, all of that.
right.
I guess I'm trying to think of where I'm going with it. How did you start? How did you start to form I'm at a loss for words right now. How did you start to form your system? Now, did you start like piece by piece and build up, and gradually you all of a sudden you look and you've got this whole interconnected system that just works for you,
Yeah.
or did you kind of shotgun it right away?
No, the first thing was the calendar. The calendar's always been there. I have an app on my phone. It's called Scheduler. And it's like a fire department schedule app. It's because I use it because I can just look at it and see you can enter how your shift works, and you can see your shift out, to the future.
Right.
For me, the only thing I have to do is every year I have to manually put in my debit days,
Right.
which is like a reverse Kelly day. We have to work. But and so I can just look on there and see that. And it also has all these little markers you can put on there. So like, and it's only for iOS, but you see the dots, but you can put these little markers on there. I have one for family, so I know that's it's an appointment, or family time or something like that. And I have other little markers I use. So the calendar was the first thing, and I used that for years because it was like, my wife's like, when are you working? Because I guess people out, even my wife that's been around this for 16 plus years in the fire service schedule, she still doesn't know, like, when are you work? I know when you work in your, your regular job, but what about your side job? So, it was keeping track of all that. And then at some point I just realized that if it's on the calendar, it exists. If it's not on the calendar, it does not exist. So at some, I don't know when, but at some point I realized that. So I'm like, okay, I need to start putting things on the calendar more and more and more. So it's a lot of trial and base, you know, trial and error based stuff with that for a while. And then, as I started learning more about, executive functioning, especially like with, Dr. Barkley was saying things about using Post-it notes, alarms, and all this kind of things like that. I started kind of researching. There's an app for everything, but at some point during that research, it's like you don't need all these other apps. The only thing you need, if you've got an iPhone, you can use reminders. I'm
Right.
like, all right. So I started kind of watching videos and all that on how to use it, and I just kind of through trial and error again, just kind of made that work for me.
Right.
My system may not work for anybody else, but it works great for me.
Right.
And I think that's the thing, is trying to find.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's, a discussion like this is more for people out there to go, oh, wait a second, executive function, executive dysfunction, schedules, apps, whatever. And they're start thinking about how they can do it. I'll be honest with you. I never used a calendar until I started this show. And then I realized that I have to have it, because I would call, like, you and I would have a conversation. I'd be like, all right, well, we'll record on Tuesday, the 13th or whatever it is. And I would just maybe jot it down somewhere. But as you well know, with ADHD or with ADD or whatever you want to say, that scatterbrained, you wouldn't remember it until, and then I would look so unprofessional, which of course this isn't a professional. I like to think this is professional, but it's a lot of, seat in my pants kind of thing. But then I would be like, oh shit, I forgot about that. Now I have to find a way to, first of all, apologize. Second of all, reschedule and hope that they don't give up on the idea. And so then I was like, all right, well, I need to start using a calendar. And then it's really tough to get used to using the calendar. And then it's tough to remember to put everything on the calendar.
Yeah, that was a struggle for me, is like putting things on. Like, I'll do that in a minute. And it's like, and using the language for a second, they're like, no, motherfucker, you're going to put this on your calendar right now.
It doesn't get done.
It's only going to take you 30 seconds.
Right.
It's going to take you 30 seconds to do it.
Right.
Yeah. But again, in some weird way, it's just, you tell yourself, like, again, and Dr. Barker kind of explains this, it's like, there's separation in your brain of knowledge and performance. You're knowing what to do and then doing, right? Yeah. You're able to do it, but then, like, your frontal lobe's just not going to let you do it. You're going to forget or whatever. And so you really have to make those conscious, like, stop.
Yeah.
Put it in your calendar.
Yeah.
Again, it's like me and my wife will be having a conversation, and she'll be talking, and I'm like, she'll say something that I need to remember. And I'm like, stop. And then, like, hey, Siri, remind me later today to blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So I have to stop her in mid conversation to put that in my reminder, or I'm typing it. People tell me something, I'm typing a reminder as I'm doing it, or what. And so they think I'm not paying attention, but I'm actually engaged, and I'm trying to, like, have a helpful reminder later to get things done they won't get done.
Yeah.
So it's learning how to navigate that stuff, and kind of putting your ego to the side and just trying to figure out what works for you.
Yeah. And I think I had this discussion with somebody the other day about, what came first for us. Is the prevalence of ADHD a trauma response in many cases, or is ADHD what brought us into a occupation like the fire service? And I think that there's some kind of interconnectedness there. I'm not sure what it is, and I don't know what kind of study has been done on it. I would need to do some research. But then it was interesting because the one comment I got from this guest was, I don't know if I'd want to do that because will they talk about, some states are going to PTSD as a service connected disability, correct? And
Yeah.
then you're like, okay, well, if there's a study out there that says some of this came, this is beforehand or whatever, it's caused by ADHD or it's a remnant of or something, would you lose that predisposition or that the supposition that it is service connected? And that was an interesting way to think about it. I had never thought about it that way.
I can tell you from my experience that, well, I think the ADHD, even if you don't have that autism, ADHD, all that's a neurodevelopmental disorder or whatever. So I think a lot of it is it's human traits anyway.
Yeah.
I just think if you have the diagnosis or your traits are to a point that they are a disorder, they are making a deficit in your life,
Mm-hmm.
then, that's, I really think you have to say, impulse control. A lot of people ain't gonna be running into, the mud, blood and beer, or into a burning fire, there's nobody, don't think a neurotypical brain really wants to do that. Is driven to do that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And, but for me is, my PTSD and complex trauma, whatever you want to call it, it is a perfect storm with my ADHD. I mean, they just amplify each other. Or it one of my executive dysfunctions is emotional control. So, and then my PTSD, my response emotion is anger,
Mm-hmm.
so I just can get fucking pissed off and 0 to nothing pretty quick. So they amplify each other. So, I know they would probably try to use it against you if you had ADHD or some kind of neurodiversity to say that that's the cause of it and not your complex trauma. But, that's a sad thing, So again, I think that would be going into a conversation. Well, I'm not going to talk about my ADHD. I'm only going to talk about my PTSD.
Yeah. Well,
And only talk about, only, I guess that conversation would be more directed, only talking about your PTSD and not letting them lead you down that road to the ADHD.
yeah, I see that. Hold on. I wanted to bring up, I did a little Google search and I know Google's not perfect, but it does. We talked briefly about the cognitive, executive function and executive dysfunction, excuse me. And obviously it's a set of cognitive processes.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate for the audience, because some people might be out there and not even aware of this. And the executive functions and their basic cognitive processes, such as attentional control, which I know that's an issue for me, cognitive inhibition, inhibitory control, which is what you just talked about, a working memory.
Mhm.
It's just, I'm horrible with that. And then cognitive flexibility.
Yeah.
And, the high order executive functions are the simultaneous use of basic executive functions to include planning and fluid intelligence, that kind of thing, problem solving, reasoning. And,
Yeah.
I think that if a number of us in a firehouse honestly took a look at these, we would go, oh shit. Yep. I got it. I know now. I see it. Now I understand it.
Yeah.
And
I like one, this from Dr. Barkley for my notes. It's the 5 executive functions that manifest in daily life were self-restraint, time management, self-organization, problem solving, emotional self-regulation, and self-motivation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that all that ties into what you were just saying.
It all ties in
guys at the
together
fire
because
station would,
it's forms of
Yeah.
or symptoms from,
yes.
and when we talk about cognitive control, they're talking in cognitive control in relation to executive functions or executive dysfunctions. Now we're looking at what you and I just talked about. Excuse me, I'm still getting my voice back from being sick.
Yeah.
And it was attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, autism, other CNS, so central nervous system disorders, and then addiction. Well, okay, what group of people have? Let's be honest. What group of people have more addiction problems than first responders?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
If you see a Venn diagram of executive addiction, like the biggest portion inside that circle would be another circle, which is ADHD. Another one, you can see me, no one else can. Another circle like that would be, autism. And then off to the side would be depression, anxiety. And then another circle would be over to the bottom would be other brain disorders,
right?
Which would include addiction. So, you don't have to, almost everyone with ADHD has some kind of executive dysfunction. Not all people with autism have ADHD, but they can have some executive dysfunction, especially like the working memory, the verbal working memory stuff. And then, depression, anxiety, all that, all of it kind of touches each other, and again, I just think it's a normal human problem, but just some of us we're more dysfunctional than other people with
right.
it. So it's like, I don't even know how it is to be neurotypical or whatever you want to say. I don't know how people function like that. I had to accept that a long time ago that I wasn't that, and I guess
I accepted that a long time ago as well. That okay, my brain doesn't work or function like anybody else's, or the quote unquote norm. What I didn't do,
right,
and what I'm trying to do now, is take responsibility and ownership for that. Okay, now I know it, and now I admit it, and now I accept it. Well, fucking do something about it is where I'm at.
right.
And so that's where this journey is for me. I'm like, okay, well, I'm 54 years old, and I'm just now figuring out what do I do with it.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me, and the brain is fascinating in general, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
On your
again, with all that being said, with all my dysfunctions, all the things I think come with my dysfunctions, I accept those as well. Like, I have my creativity brain, part of that brain, that thing is just like, on fire. Anything I can do to be creative, I love doing. It brings me joy, and things like that. So if I'm kind of flaky on other things, but I have that, I would take being flaky on other things to have the vast amount of creative drive that I have to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
it's not great for normal day-to-day life, but the joy that it brings is, can't be replaced.
It's that old adage, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So let's figure out what we can fix, and then figure out what you harness from that same situation.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And the more I learn about myself and my brain, and I do it honestly by talking to you, by talking to everybody else. And then I research the things we talk about, or sometimes I research beforehand, sometimes I research afterwards, sometimes I research just like I'm doing now in the moment. And that's just the way it works for me. But the more I do it, the more it's like, wow, this is fascinating. What can I do to change this? Or what can I do to harness it? Not even just change it.
Yeah, I don't think you're on change it. I think it's just all about understanding and management and giving yourself grace.
Yeah, grace is a big word.
I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, and during the holiday season, my wife always, and she just great at decorating, and she wants to give the wow factor to the kids, even the older ones. And her anxiety is, pumped up a little bit, and And I'm like, hey, we can only get done what we can get done. So and in that moment, I was, trying to give us grace, to accept, we can only accept what we can do.
Right.
And stressing over all this is going to make Christmas or, holidays not fun.
Exactly.
So, we got to a point that we both accepted that and got it done, but it was just, it's allowing yourself that grace. And it's not to let yourself slide, and it's not to let yourself, continually do bad habits. It's like, hey, I know what's going on. Things happen, and how can I just be better next time at these things?
Yeah. Grace isn't an excuse.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Grace is not an excuse. And if you're using it as an excuse, then you're manipulating it.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. I like that little conversation, because now I think that'll open up some more questions and maybe some more conversation from other people that are listening and are starting to recognize some of those same behaviors. So, and I think it is very relatable to the fire service. I think it's, like you said, it's one of the reasons we're willing to, not to sound corny and cheesy, but to run into a burning building when other people aren't, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
And to do some of the other things that we do. And it kind of explains why we all kind of recognize it and relate to each other.
Oh yeah.
So
trauma bond.
Yeah. Trauma bond. Exactly. I'm going to thank you for that conversation. And I hope that you and I stay in touch a little bit, because I think that I'm learning from you, and I appreciate the connection. So, I thank you for coming on today and being so open and honest about these things. They're not always the easiest things to talk about, because we're realizing and recognizing, things that are different about ourselves and or about family members. And it's not always easy to share that with an audience.
Same to you, man. I appreciate everything you're doing. I mean, like, I think I've told you this in text or message before, but you've been large. The podcast, the community, have been a large portion of my journey is listening. I can't listen to every episode and all that, because it just, triggers stuff. But, just knowing I'm not the only person out there struggling, and, other people out there. And then it's been a very good part of my week when this comes out, because like, man, I'm gonna learn something today, and I'm every episode I listen to had something I learned from. So I appreciate you and appreciate everybody that's been on. It's helped me out a lot over the last few years.
And likewise, I appreciate those words. That means a lot to me. So we will wrap up right here. I think that, I could ask you about another book in Everyday Carry, but we just did that. So unless you have another book you want to add, you feel free and feel welcome. I always take book suggestions.
I'm reading a history book right now. So I mean, it's Rebels at Sea. It's about, the privateers of the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
So it's just part of American history that a lot of people, things that you were not taught in school. So it's for me, it's pretty interesting, but that's one of my favorite periods in history, read about the Revolutionary War. So
perfect.
That would be my book suggestion.
That is perfect, sir. And with that, I'll let you get on with the rest of your day, and
all right,
I'll let you know when the show's coming out, so you get a heads up at least.
No problem. And if anyone has questions out there about special education, or the IEP process and need help or don't understand what to do, you can reach out to me on Instagram at TXSickBoy, and just send me a message and we'll connect, and I'll try to walk you through what I do understand and what I do know.
Awesome. Perfect, man. I appreciate it. And I'll say that this show is a wrap, and we're out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com, for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.